Welcome to Strides to Solutions. I'm Esther Adams. Today, we're exploring the intersection of clinical psychology, neuroscience, and real world application through humanity's two most precious and most squandered resources, time and money. If you've ever wondered why you work harder than your parents did, but have less to show for it, if you've noticed that having more technology to save time somehow leaves you with less of it, or if you've felt the crushing weight of knowing that most stress in your life ultimately traces back to these two resources, you're not alone. The average American carries $5,000 in credit card debt while working an extra week per year compared to a generation ago, yet feels more financially insecure and time starved than ever. We're going to explore the psychology behind why we sabotage ourselves with these resources, the personality patterns that trap us in cycles of scarcity, and most importantly, the evidence based strategies that can transform your relationship with both time and money from sources of stress into foundations of freedom. Here's a thought experiment that might change how you see everything. If we took all the money in the world from the wealthiest people and distributed it evenly among Earth's inhabitants, within 2 years it would all be back in the hands of the people who initially held it. This isn't cynicism. It's a Nobel Prize winning economic theory that reveals something profound about human psychology. The distribution of wealth isn't primarily about opportunity or even education. It's about mindset, habits, and the invisible scripts that run our financial lives. The same principle applies to time. Give someone an extra hour in their day, and rather than feeling less stressed, they'll likely fill it with more obligations. Give them time saving technology, and instead of working less, they'll simply produce more. We've created a paradox where abundance breeds scarcity, where every solution becomes a new problem. Consider these sobering facts. The average American doesn't pay off their December holiday shopping until June of the following year. College students graduate with an average of 4 credit cards and $2,327 in credit card debt, and that's before we even talk about student loans. Meanwhile, we're working more hours than our parents did, sleeping less, taking fewer vacations, and somehow still feeling like we're falling behind. This isn't a failure of individual willpower, it's a systemic issue rooted in how our brains process resources, how our culture programs our relationship with time and money, and how modern capitalism has evolved to exploit our psychological vulnerabilities. But understanding these mechanisms is the first step to freedom. Let's start with money, because despite what people say about time being more valuable, it's the fear of not having enough money that keeps most of us enslaved to schedules we hate. There's a concept called poverty consciousness, a mental state where no matter how much money you have, you operate from a mindset of scarcity. It becomes a self fulfilling prophecy. You clutch so tightly to what you have that you strangle opportunity. You make fear based decisions that guarantee you'll stay exactly where you are. But poverty consciousness isn't really about money, it's about worthiness. Deep down, many people don't believe they deserve abundance. They've internalized messages from childhood, from culture, from religion, that wanting more is greedy, that struggle is noble, that security comes from playing small. So even when opportunity knocks, they don't answer. Even when money flows in, they quickly dispose of it, unconsciously maintaining their familiar state of struggle. The opposite of poverty consciousness isn't wealth consciousness, it's sufficiency consciousness. It's knowing that you have enough, that you are enough, that there's enough to go around. It's making decisions from abundance rather than scarcity, from possibility rather than fear. But how do you develop this when everything in our culture is designed to make you feel insufficient? First, you have to understand how you're being manipulated. Modern marketing isn't just about selling products, it's about creating identity. When you see people on TV living in beautiful homes, driving luxury cars, wearing designer clothes, your brain doesn't process this as fiction. It processes it as normal, as what you should have. The gap between that normal and your reality becomes a source of constant stress and dissatisfaction. This manipulation has become even more sophisticated with neuromarketing, using brain scans to identify exactly which images, words, and sounds trigger your buying impulses. Harvard marketing professor Gerald Zaltman has actually filed a patent for techniques that market directly to your unconscious mind using Jungian archetypes. They're literally hacking your psyche to separate you from your money. The ego, as Freud described it, seeks to minimize pain and maximize pleasure. Credit cards exploit this perfectly. They offer the pleasure of acquisition without the immediate pain of payment. It's power without consequence, or so it seems. But this power is an illusion. Every swipe is a small act of self sabotage, mortgaging your future for a fleeting present pleasure. The solution isn't to become a monk, renouncing all material pleasures. It's to become conscious. Here's what conscious financial living actually looks like. First, make a budget and follow it. This sounds simple, but most people have no idea where their money actually goes. They have a vague sense of income and expenses, but no real clarity. A budget isn't about restriction, it's about awareness. It's about choosing where your money goes rather than wondering where it went. Second, don't spend what you don't have. Credit cards should be for convenience, not credit. If you can't pay the full balance every month, you can't afford what you're buying. Period. One practical technique: freeze your credit cards in a block of ice. The time it takes to thaw them gives you time to reconsider whether that purchase is really an emergency. Third, pay your bills on time. Late fees aren't just expensive, they're psychological poison. Every late payment reinforces the narrative that you're irresponsible, that you can't manage your life. These small failures accumulate into an identity of failure. Fourth, save at least 10% of your income. This isn't about the money. It's about proving to yourself that you're not living in survival mode, that you have margin, that you're building something. Even if it's just $10 a month, the psychological effect of seeing that account grow is profound. But let's talk about the elephant in the room: retail therapy, shopping to feel better, buying things to fill emotional voids. This isn't weakness, it's addiction. The dopamine hit from a purchase is real, measurable, powerful. But like any addiction, tolerance builds. You need bigger purchases, more frequent hits to achieve the same high. The antidote to retail therapy isn't deprivation, it's replacement. You need healthy sources of dopamine, self worth, and control. Exercise, creativity, meaningful work, genuine connection. These provide what shopping promises but never delivers: lasting satisfaction. There's also the issue of keeping up with the Joneses, or in the social media age, keeping up with everyone. You're comparing your behind the scenes to everyone else's highlight reel. You're competing in a race that has no finish line, where the goalposts constantly move, where victory is impossible because there's always someone with more. The solution is to opt out of the race entirely. This doesn't mean living in poverty, it means defining wealth on your own terms. Maybe wealth is having time to read, maybe it's being debt free, maybe it's being able to help others. When you define wealth internally rather than externally, you become immune to manipulation. Now let's talk about time, because if money problems create stress, time problems create insanity. We've reached a point where being busy is a status symbol, where exhaustion is worn like a badge of honor, where "I don't have time" has become the default response to everything. But here's the truth nobody wants to hear: you have time for what you prioritize. When someone says they don't have time to exercise but spends 2 hours scrolling social media, they're not lying. They're revealing their true priorities. The problem isn't lack of time, it's lack of clarity about what matters. Time management starts with understanding that time isn't manageable. You can't create more of it, store it, or stop it. What you're really managing is yourself, your choices, your attention, your energy. This shift in perspective changes everything. There are 6 personality types that sabotage time management, and most of us embody several. The type A personality approaches time like a competition. Everything is urgent, everything is a crisis, everything needs to be done now. But this urgency is mostly manufactured. Type A's create stress to feel important, to feel alive. They mistake motion for progress, activity for achievement. The workaholic uses time at work to avoid life. Work becomes identity, purpose, and escape all rolled into one. They'll spend 14 hours at the office, not because the work demands it, but because going home means facing emptiness, relationship problems, or existential questions they're not ready to answer. The technophile loses time to the black hole of technology. They check email every 5 minutes, respond to every notification, maintain a constant state of partial attention. They're always connected but never present. Technology that should save time instead fragments it into useless slivers. The time juggler tries to do everything simultaneously. They're on a conference call while driving, while eating, while checking email. They believe they're being efficient, but research shows multitasking reduces performance on all tasks. They're not saving time, they're wasting it in the most exhausting way possible. The procrastinator has a broken relationship with future consequences. Their brain literally weighs immediate comfort more heavily than future pain. They're not lazy. They're wired for a world where immediate threats mattered more than long term planning. In our modern world, this wiring is catastrophic. The perfectionist confuses excellence with obsession. They spend 80% of their time on the last 20% of quality, hitting diminishing returns that border on negative. They can't ship, can't finish, can't move on because it's never quite right. Perfect becomes the enemy, not just of good, but of done. The people pleaser, what the text calls the lifestyle behavior trap, can't say no. Every request becomes an obligation, every need becomes their responsibility. They're so busy meeting everyone else's needs that their own life becomes an afterthought. Understanding which type you are, and most of us are combinations, is the first step to breaking free. But intellectual understanding isn't enough. You need systems. The first system is prioritization. Not everything matters equally, but our brains struggle with this. We're wired to respond to whatever's loudest, newest, or most immediate, but these are rarely what's most important. The ABC rank order method is simple but powerful. A tasks are must do today items. B tasks are should do soon items. C tasks are nice to do eventually items. Most people spend their time on C tasks because they're easy and provide quick wins. But C tasks are where dreams go to die. The Pareto Principle takes this further. 80% of your results come from 20% of your efforts. This means that out of 10 tasks on your to do list, only 2 really matter. The rest are busy work, distraction, procrastination, disguised as productivity. But the most powerful framework comes from Stephen Covey's urgent versus important matrix. Imagine a grid with 4 quadrants: urgent and important, crises; not urgent but important, planning, prevention, development; urgent but not important, interruptions; and not urgent and not important, trivia. Most people live in the urgent quadrants, bouncing between crises and interruptions. They're reactive, stressed, exhausted. The secret is to spend most of your time in quadrant 2, not urgent, but important. This is where you prevent crises, build capabilities, create the life you want rather than just surviving the life you have. The second system is scheduling, but not the kind where you fill every minute. That's a recipe for breakdown. Effective scheduling includes buffer time, transition time, thinking time. It acknowledges that you're human, not a machine. Boxing involves breaking your day into 3 to 5 hour chunks dedicated to major projects. This acknowledges that significant work requires sustained focus, not fractured attention. You can't write a report in 6 10-minute segments scattered throughout the day. Time mapping breaks the day into smaller segments for smaller tasks. But the key is batching similar activities. Make all your calls in one block. Answer all emails in another. Context switching, jumping between different types of tasks, is exhausting and inefficient. Clustering is about geographical efficiency. Run all errands in one trip, schedule all meetings on the same day. This isn't just about saving gas, it's about saving mental energy. Every transition requires cognitive resources you can't spare. The third system is execution. This is where most time management fails. You can prioritize perfectly and schedule brilliantly, but if you don't actually do the work, it's all fantasy. Execution requires understanding that motivation is a myth. You don't need to feel like doing something to do it. In fact, action often precedes motivation, not the other way around. Start, and the motivation will follow. It also requires understanding that perfection is procrastination in disguise. Done is better than perfect. You can always improve something later, but you can't improve something that doesn't exist. But here's what nobody tells you about time and money management: they're not really about time and money, they're about values, identity, and mortality. How you spend your money reveals what you actually value versus what you say you value. How you spend your time reveals who you are versus who you pretend to be. The fear underlying both time and money stress is the same: the fear of not having enough, of running out, of scarcity. But this fear creates what it seeks to avoid. By clutching too tightly to time, we waste it on trivial pursuits. By grasping at money, we spend it on things that don't matter. The solution isn't better systems, though systems help. It's a fundamental shift in relationship. Time isn't your enemy, it's the medium through which you experience life. Money isn't your master, it's a tool for creating experiences and security. When you relate to them from abundance rather than scarcity, everything changes. This doesn't mean pretending you have unlimited resources. It means recognizing that you have enough for what truly matters. It means making conscious choices rather than reactive ones. It means saying no to good things so you can say yes to great things. Technology was supposed to give us more time, but it's had the opposite effect. Email that was supposed to replace slow mail now demands instant response. Smartphones that were supposed to free us from desks now chain us to 24/7 availability. Social media that was supposed to connect us now fragments our attention into useless shards. The solution isn't to become a Luddite, it's to use technology consciously rather than compulsively. Turn off notifications, check email at designated times, use airplane mode liberally. Technology should be a tool, not a master. The same principle applies to money and technology. Online shopping, one click purchasing, digital wallets, they all remove the friction from spending. That friction was protective. It gave you time to reconsider. Now you can go from impulse to purchase in seconds, bypassing all conscious thought. Creating artificial friction can help. Delete shopping apps from your phone, unsubscribe from promotional emails, use cash for discretionary spending. The physical act of handing over money activates pain centers in the brain that credit cards bypass. But ultimately, this isn't about tricks and techniques. It's about facing the void that consumption and busyness are meant to fill. Why do you need to buy things to feel valuable? Why do you need to be busy to feel important? What are you running from when you run from task to task, purchase to purchase? These are uncomfortable questions, but they're the only questions that matter. Because until you address the underlying need, no amount of budgeting or scheduling will help. You'll always find ways to sabotage systems that threaten your core coping mechanisms. The path forward isn't about becoming a different person. It's about becoming more fully who you already are. It's about aligning your resources, time, and money with your values. It's about creating a life that doesn't require constant escape through shopping or busyness. This requires what the text calls editing your life, regularly assessing what's essential and letting go of everything else. It's not minimalism for its own sake, but clarity. What do you actually need? What actually serves you? What's just noise? It also requires boundaries, the ability to say no, to turn off the phone, to leave the office, to disappoint people. Boundaries aren't walls, they're the structure that allows something to exist. Without boundaries, you don't have a life. You have a series of reactions to other people's needs. The practical steps are simple but not easy. Track where your money actually goes for a month. Track where your time actually goes for a week. The results will shock you. You'll find you're spending money on subscriptions you forgot you had, spending time on activities that bring no value, living a life that doesn't match your stated priorities. Then make conscious choices. Cancel subscriptions, delete apps, say no to commitments, create space, not to fill with more stuff, but to breathe, to think, to be. The irony is that by doing less, you accomplish more. By buying less, you have more. By slowing down, you speed up. These aren't paradoxes. They're the natural result of alignment. When you're not wasting energy on what doesn't matter, you have abundant energy for what does. As we close today's episode of Strides to Solutions, I want to leave you with this challenge. For the next week, track every penny you spend and every hour you live. Not to judge yourself, but to become conscious. You can't change what you're not aware of. Then ask yourself the hardest question. If someone analyzed how you spent your time and money, what would they conclude about your values? Would those conclusions match what you say you value? The gap between those two answers is where your work begins. If you're ready to dive deeper into transforming your relationship with resources, my book, Rescript Your Reality, offers a groundbreaking approach to understanding and recalibrating the internal scripts that drive your behavior around time and money. Available on Amazon, it provides specific exercises for breaking free from scarcity consciousness and creating sustainable abundance in every area of life. Remember, you already have enough time and money for what truly matters. The question isn't how to get more, it's how to stop wasting what you have on what doesn't serve you. Thank you for joining me today. Until next time, this is Esther Adams reminding you that freedom isn't about having unlimited resources. It's about consciously choosing how to invest the resources you have.